The walls of ancient Jericho did not collapse when the trumpet sounded, but perhaps thanks to a clever strategy by Joshua. Joshua, as we know, took over the leadership of Israel from the Exodus under Moses. The wall of Jericho did not collapse when trumpets sounded, but thanks to what Joshua had a strategy. The collapse of the ancient and legendary walls of Jericho, this powerful Canaanite city, when Joshua's trumpet sounded, is considered one of the greatest miracles, but also mysteries of the Bible. Jericho actually, of course, is a Greek combined word meaning holy sound, Jeros Ichos. Now, many have tried to find a physical rather than a supernatural explanation for the biblical collapse, and the latest excavations in the ancient city by British archaeologist John Garstang have revealed the most logical and natural explanation of the event, but also the most intelligent perhaps. Garstang's discoveries made it possible to reconstruct ancient Jericho as it was when Joshua captured it. The collapse of the walls, however, was not due to trumpets, but to Joshua's inspiring knowledge of strategy and military psychology, as well as his perceptive abilities. While the Israelites ceremoniously marched around the city for 6 full days, while the soldiers fell asleep and only the trumpets echoed, the pioneers secretly dug into the city walls. This ceremonial military march had the sole purpose of attracting the attention of the deceived inhabitants of Jericho. On the 7th day, therefore, the digging work was completed. In place of the tunnels, which had been opened, timbers were placed, so as to support the walls until the appointed time. At the same time, all appropriate measures had been taken to set fire to the supports, and when these were burned, the walls would collapse ceremoniously. On the 7th day, there was an even greater need to divert the attention of the inhabitants from the secret work that was being done underground, under the walls, and to cover up the noise of the final preparations in every way. That's why Joshua organized a more impressive spectacle in order to disorient them. 7 times the Israelites marched around Jericho, and the trumpets sounded loudly. The besieged looked on in bewilderment. They did not know what to make of it. Then the 7 trumpets arrived, signaling the arsonists to set the fire, which would destroy the wooden supports and cause the walls to collapse. The fires were lit and the walls collapsed to the ground, as the Bible describes in detail. So it was truly ingenious ploy by Joshua. Archaeologist John Garstang managed to locate the remains of the walls with obvious signs of their excavation, although more than 3,000 years had passed. Patiently investigating the fortifications from the time of the multifaceted Joshua, the British archaeologists discovered that Jericho occupied a smaller area than initially estimated. It looked more like a large village. Between 2000 and 1800 BC, Jericho occupied an area of about 120 acres and had an amphitheatrical fortress on the top of the mountain, which dominated the surrounding valleys. The ruins of the old walls hugged the edges of the mountain. A deep ditch stretched around the walls as an auxiliary fortification. One of the interpretations of the collapse of the walls of Jericho was that the ritualistic and synchronized march of the Israelites for days, non-stop, all around them, eventually affected their foundation and thus they collapsed. There is some scientific possibility in this, but no physicist could accept this theory of their destruction. Also, the other theory, which spoke of a strong earthquake, was rejected as nothing relevant was found. John Garstang also discovered that Jericho had 2 walls. The outer was 2 meters thick and the inner about 4 meters thick. Furthermore, Bible scholars have noted the curious repetition of the number 7 in the story of the biblical destruction of Jericho. The army marched in unison and without let-up around the city for 7 days. On the 7th day, it circled the city 7 times. 7 priests led the 7 trumpeters, who blew their trumpet 7 times. Also, to amplify the sound of the trumpets, Joshua had ordered his army to march in complete silence until the final and decisive blow of the trumpet. All of this, according to the respected British archaeologist, demonstrated a deep knowledge of psychology on the part of the Israelite general. It was a sign of military skill in keeping the enemy on edge. If we add fear to the uncertainty, then the besieged were obviously doomed by definition. However, the number 7 also was wisely chosen, as it was considered a magical and sacred number by the ancients. Surely then, on the 7th day of that strange parade of enemies, the inhabitants of Jericho would certainly have been extremely agitated and would have expected the worst that could happen to them. John Garstang intended to return to the area soon and bring to light as much evidence as possible regarding the destruction of the biblical city. This news was published in the newspaper Nightly on July 23rd, 1931, about 100 years ago. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.